Welcome back to the Daily Dope. I'm your commentator and friend, Brandon Strong. Someday I'll get that intro nailed down. Meanwhile, I'm still wondering if I'm even wanting to be on this channel, man. I mean, I don't want to make any enemies, but I gotta be real, man. I'm coming from the heart. Sometimes this stuff's a little scary to report on. I'll say that because, the big thing is maybe the cops are watching. And then there's videos like this where we want to ask the question, what are we really going for here? Legalizing marijuana, or are we going for ending prohibition? Because, when I was younger and envisioning possibly what legalized marijuana would look like, I never envisioned that there would still be a bunch of arrest behind it. And it's like you keep seeing it over and over again wherever marijuana is legalized. These arrests keep happening, keep increasing. The Denver Police Department said they need to get a bigger area to store all the evidence that they seize. If you're talking about, let's just take that example, the Colorado one. What if that is the case? That they have more evidence that they have to deal with, so they need a bigger evidence room, and in fact, they need an evidence warehouse. So you could be like, well, them are illegal criminal grows that they're busting up. But if we don't have prohibition, then we wouldn't have those. And we wouldn't need those to fill the gaps of the supply and demand, market forces. Market forces are an important thing to keep in mind here. There wouldn't be illegal grows where they bust anywhere from 800 to 5,000 plants if there wasn't A, opportunity seekers looking for opportunities of a lifetime, and B, an actual demand for that kind of opportunist to, fill a hole, fill a gap. Whenever people ask me what the market force is with cannabis, my answer is always, well, the demand is a bottomless pit, and I really don't see how you can grow enough to fill it. I did a story recently about California having an 11 million pound problem where they have, they just way overproduce the amount of cannabis needed to fill the demand for California's needs. Now, of course, that's true. It's always been true. California grows the best and the most weed. We've always known that. So, of course, they're shipping that shit out and they're growing too much. But do we really know the numbers? I mean, there's people that maybe posted comments on my video or somewhere else about the video. Like, is there really numbers to back this shit up? 11 million pounds? Come on. Not that I'm saying that's not the number or that couldn't be the number, but how do we know these numbers? What am I talking about anyway again? I'm talking about legalization or prohibition ending, which I know it sounds to most people listening right now, they probably think, well, this is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. A lot of my listeners will say that. If you watch the Colin McDougall interview for my Legalize that I just did, it's only a couple videos back on my timeline of videos here. Somewhere in the towards 3/4 towards the end of the interview, it came up, and he said something along the lines of, you could call it ending prohibition or legalizing marijuana or decriminalization, and he kind of acted like these things are all the same. Well, I'm just here to tell you that they're not. And one of my sticking points on my Legalize was that, the 21 and up. Now, I mean, a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean? Well, I don't really see a problem with having no age limit on cannabis. That being said, when you're talking about points of sales, then you can say something like, okay, if you want to go to the store over here and buy weed, you got to be 21. I mean, it's kind of like that without actually being, it's like an unwritten rule. Like how many times you ever hear minor in possession? It's not that big of a deal. It's a $500 ticket, minor in possession. And the person that supplies that minor could get a $1,000 delinquency of a minor ticket, contributing to a delinquency. We got to quit ruining kids' lives with marijuana charges. So I look back into that, and here's the regulate marijuana like alcohol. Here's what they actually say for all you people that think, oh, well, then the marijuana arrests, like Kevin Sabat said, are going to go up for the teens and the minorities and blah, blah, blah. This right here kind of prevents that a little bit. Let's look at it. A person who is engaged in conduct described in sections 41A and 41D or 41G, a person under 21 years of age who possesses not more than 2.5 ounces of marijuana, who cultivates not more than 12 marijuana plants. So they're talking about the protection of the laws, little window of protection that it gives you, the 2.5 ounces and the 12 plants. But now it's talking about you're not the right age, you're under 21. So for violation number 1, you're responsible for a civil infraction and may be punished as follows. 1, if the person is less than 18 years of age, by a fine not more than $100 or community service or forfeiture of the marijuana. Completion of 4 hours of drug education or counseling, or if the person is at least 18, so that would be 18, 19, and 20. The fine not more than 100 and forfeiture of the marijuana. So they don't get the classes. So I guess the point here is that they're trying to save the youngins from the scourge of marijuana. Sorry that took so long. But anyway, that sounds to me like what they should do if they catch you with alcohol. That's what they always use, like things that should apply to alcohol for marijuana. It's so ridiculous. Second violation, this is a graduated system. Now your fine goes up to 500, and now you got to do 8 hours of drug education. So it's not, a big deal. Then they're talking about if you have more than twice of the amount of the marijuana allowed in Section 5, cultivates more than twice the amount of plants in Section 5, or delivers without receiving remuneration, who is at least 21 years of age, and twice the amount of marijuana allowed in Section 5, shall be responsible for a misdemeanor, but shall not be subject to imprisonment unless the violation was habitual, willful, or commercial purpose, or violation involved violence. Now, that's a good additive to that, because yeah, anytime you add violence to something, it should be a jailable offense, in my opinion. But that being said, anything else besides that involved with marijuana shouldn't be jailable offense. But we're not going to go over this piece by piece and tear it down for every little thing that you could get arrested for, because to be honest, this legalization platform, Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol in Michigan, and otherwise known as the campaign that used to be My Legalize, and then the coalition formed between them. I want to say the other group was called Smart Approaches. No, that's something else to do with marijuana legalization. And Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol is the main, I guess, platform that they're going under now. Whatever. It's a protection piece, and it's a commerce piece, and it's a regulation piece, to say the least. So we're just going to randomly stop in here and check into these regulations and say, well, could you get arrested for this or not? Um, Testing, packaging, and labeling standards, procedures, and required for marijuana, including a maximum THC level for marijuana infused project, a requirement that a representative sample of marijuana to be tested by a marijuana safety compliance facility, and a requirement that the amount of marijuana. So basically, they're saying if you say you have like 10% or 20 micrograms of THC, whatever you're saying is on it, you have to have a certain amount of it tested at a lab that tested at that much to say that that's what it is. And that's the way it is with alcohol. So if you ever were sitting there drinking a beer and you were like, "Yup, it says 4.9% alcohol on here, so I'm trusting them. It's always going to be that. Every time I drink this exact same brand, it's going to always be that." That's just a general thing where they're like, you know what? If we test a shitload of this, this is going to be pretty much what you get a lot of, 4.9. And it might deviate a little bit one way or the other. But, not like in Budweiser's case where they found it to be watered down quite a bit on testing. But it doesn't look like you can go to jail for that. Because, it's a testing regimen. But there's a lot of stuff in here that just makes it so like if you're in the regulation, in the regulatory system, it's really hard to get arrested unless you blatantly do something that's, a regulation violation. And I've often been the one to say, well, we don't need the police to be the regulators. So I looked through here and I tried to find areas where the police could be the regulators. And now the age thing was the biggest thing that stood out as like, okay. And then, like if you have too many plants, and that would be just somebody who got all these licenses, but for some reason it wasn't enough and they had to grow more. And I don't know. I mean, do them people need to be arrested? Probably not. And like in Colin McDougall's first interview, he did say that, people would, they would have to forfeit the extra marijuana. And I don't know if that means they get to keep the marijuana that's not extra. But whatever. There's a little bit, there's a lot of little things in here that I don't like as far as regulations, but what are you going to do? I don't plan on getting one of these regulated facilities personally. I mean, maybe sometime in the distant future, if things are ironed out pretty good or whatever. But this does have like a almost a preference system for people that were in the original medical marijuana program to, I don't know, other people to graduate in. And this is all talking about legalizing marijuana in Michigan. Nothing like, I'm not going too crazy here. The biggest sticking point to me was the things that this law does not say you can do, Like this law doesn't say you can drive around smoking weed. This law does not authorize people under a certain age, which is 21, to do anything that says it is legal in this law. And then it has a bunch of stuff about the licenses. So, I mean, if you read through this thing and there's places in this thing that you think that are really bad areas of concern where you think, okay, look, if this little thing here, if the cop catches you on this, then off to jail you go. You gotta keep in mind doing what people do already, because people are getting arrested in these legalized situations because of things that they've already been doing their whole lives. Like for example, in California, family farms that have been around for 2 or 3 generations are starting to get kicked in because they're not willing to get into the regulatory system because it might cut their production like down to like 10% of what it used to be. But if you can find something in here that you really think is something that the cops will be involved with the arrests of, I want to know what you think. I've read this thing about 5 times now, and yeah, this area here, this graduated system, it really doesn't say what happens after number 2. And so there you go. That will be where the courts and whatever happened with the medical marijuana program, where everybody comes in and interprets the law and says, well, number 3, it's time for a felony. So off to juvie you go, or if you're 18 to 20, or we'll try you as an adult. Either way, if we catch you with, a pound of weed, you get a felony and you're going to go to juvie or jail or prison, So, this is all speculation on my part, but we have to take what we've seen before and learn from it and be honest about it. That's all I'm going to say about this. And this thing also, if it does pass, which will be in November of 2018, the department shall begin accepting applications for marijuana establishments within 12 months after the effective date of this act. So, right off the bat, this thing here, this whole regulation package, don't get up and running until November of 2019. And we've seen these delayed starts before in Michigan, but we've seen them in other places that were really just atrocious. But in Michigan, what these delayed starts have meant so far, and they don't really have any way of ironing it out, is people are getting their dispensaries kicked in and they're getting charged with felonies or whatever. So already, I'm not liking that. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. And then we go to the other, like when I say legalize marijuana or get rid of prohibition, the get rid of prohibition part would be the abrogate, because that simply is the definition of abrogate, is to repeal or do away with. And that usually applies to a law, right, or formal agreement. And like you can read this quite simply, it adds one line to the Constitution of Michigan. Zoom that in for us. The agricultural, personal, recreational, medical, medicinal, commercial, industrial, and other use of cannabis in any form by any person shall be lawful activity. That's what getting rid of prohibition means right there. All prohibitions on the use of cannabis in any form by any persons are hereby null and void. Use of cannabis shall include but not be limited to the possession, consumption, growing, manufacture, delivery, treatment, purchase, sale, transfer, and or transport of any plant, seed, flower, leaf, mixture, derivative, extract, product, or preparation of any part of any cannabis plant for all personal, recreational, religious, medicinal, research, development, educational, commercial, and industrial purposes within the state of Michigan. No excise tax, no fines, no fees, no regulation to diminish the use of cannabis shall be levied or allowed. This amendment shall be retroactive. No agency of the state shall receive monies from the federal government or any other entity to be used in the promotion of continued prohibitions of cannabis. Any section, subsection, or part of this amendment is for any reason held to be invalid or unconstitutional, the remaining sections, subsections, or parts of those sections shall not be affected, but will remain in full force and effect. There's no room to breathe right there for the police to do anything. And probably the biggest, sticker shock to law enforcement in the criminal justice system in Michigan would be that one right there. This amendment shall be retroactive. So that right there is just a basic, I don't know if you want to call it, because in Michigan, marijuana arrests are high, and populations in prison are considerably full of people that have marijuana charges. Now, is that the charge that they're in there for? That's the long game charge for people with sentences of like 5 to 10 years. In some cases, yeah, but probably not. It's probably just one of those additives or reason why they were arrested in the first place. I don't know. The numbers are pretty all over the place, and we can get into that. Here you have all the numbers in Michigan, and I'm going to go ahead and put the links to these articles that I'm going to go through, and even this here we have the regulate like alcohol language. I'll give you the link to that, and then the abrogate. That's abrogate.org, Abrogate Michigan Prohibition. And then we have this article here, which I'm going to get into right now. So one last word on this. Abrogate versus regulate. People always ask me, what do you think? Well, what do I think? I've been thinking about this for my whole life. All right. And I didn't know what to think last year because this is the same question I was posed last year. Last year I had a thing going called Strong Meds. You might have seen me out there talking shit about this on comment sections and message boards. Didn't have a channel. Well, I did, but we're talking about 2015 leading up to 2016, the last year campaign. 2016 campaign ended by the time I started my channel. But anyway, it's been the same question, this or that. And to be honest, I love Abrogate, and I think that is the best possible thing that we can possibly have, is to end prohibition. Duh. Why would... I mean, if you've known me my whole life and seen what I've done in my life, and I'm not going to sit here and say it and tell you what I have done my whole life, but this is what I would be fighting for. And all along the way, we've been throwing little nuggets. Like when I lived in Detroit in 2003, we had a medical marijuana vote in Detroit then, and we passed it with like 67% or more. And then, it was just after that, one thing after another in 2008, finally, the medical marijuana program, Medical Marijuana Act or whatever, we voted on that. I helped petition for that, and I didn't really like it when I read it, to be honest. I didn't think, my critique of it wasn't about it being vague like everybody else said later on. My critique of it was that it kind of just, it was a protection piece, but it didn't do enough. And that's, I guess, what they say about the vagueness. It didn't detail how dispensaries should be operated and ran, all that shit. But you could have at least just said, the exchange of marijuana between patients or whatever, caregivers and other patients even would have been sufficient. But they had it basically not worded at all like there could be any kind of distribution between people that grow marijuana and people that need marijuana. But yet there was this fucking thing in there where the people that grow marijuana have a shitload of extra marijuana on hand, especially if they're growing for a bunch of people. So, whatever. Another question I get about these two campaigns. Well, let me get back to the first question. The first question was, what do you think? And I'm going to tell you this. I think this is the better thing to go with, and I hope somehow this gets through. Like, I really wish my network was better. I really wish I had like 100,000 fucking subscribers in Michigan, because that's how many patients I think would pay attention to this channel if they even knew about it. But yeah, so this campaign has been going on for a month, and I don't know what's going on. I haven't talked to the person that I did the interview with, Timothy. He's the one that is behind this whole campaign, and I'm gonna talk to him again. And yeah, we're gonna do whatever I can. I'm done whatever I can do. I'm gonna keep doing whatever I can do until the campaign's over. I mean, I can't be a commercial for the campaign. I'm just gonna report honestly about what I've seen and what I see going on. I think that the campaign itself has a more positive spirit than it did last year, and that's all I'm going to say about it. And then this campaign, again, if you come across somebody that has a petition, sign it, seek it out if you can. I'm pretty sure they're going to be on the ballot. There's no question about it. So just kind of like, we'll see what happens between now and then. I'm pretty behind this because I think the Abrogate, I think it's still going to be a little bit of a stretch to get the signatures. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a hater and I'm, like, I don't have faith or that I'm not going to try hard enough myself or that other people won't. I see that there's a lot of spirit behind this campaign this time. And there's a chance that maybe we could break through. I mean, think about this, man. There's at least 200,000 medical marijuana patients in Michigan. And this isn't about medical marijuana. But the medical marijuana patients and caregivers in this state have been going through some serious shit the whole time this has been legalized. And I'm going to get into that. So I'm done talking about the two campaigns. If they both pass, what would happen? What do I think would happen? If they both came up on the ballot and they both said we're a yes, basically this would just add more this would basically knock a few things right off of the My Legalize or the Regulate Like Alcohol platform. That's all it would do. I mean, unlimited everything. Nobody would have any problems, and they might have to change their tax language a little bit. That's it, though. I mean, the delivery thing right here might knock out this whole, like, transporter thing, but transporter doesn't have to be written into law. Those kind of things will be like, if people need them, they'll fucking seek it out, and maybe it's just like, that's just like where the government spurring on some kind of capitalism that wouldn't have happened before if it wasn't for them. Like, come on, man. If someone needed an armored car to come and pick up their weed stash and take it to the fucking next spot, then they'll call an armored car and do it. But yeah. And why is it a big deal in Michigan? Because here's why. Michigan arrests have skyrocketed since legalization. Now, this is a year old, this article, just to let you know, by Ab Hanna, Green Rush Daily. Well, here's why. So despite arrests dropping to their lowest numbers in 20 years, marijuana arrests, they are still rising in states like Michigan. Michigan State made the move to legalize medical marijuana nearly a decade ago. Voters approved the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act on November 4th of 2008. However, the state has yet to decriminalize marijuana. As a result, the number of marijuana arrests in Michigan is still able to rise. From 2008 to 2015, marijuana arrests jumped up an entire 17%. According to the Michigan poll, the majority of residents support the legalization of marijuana, while only 35% oppose it. On the other hand, the state's police seem to be cracking down even harder on pot. Marijuana arrests have gone up 17% since legalization, while arrests for other drugs have gone down by that same number. Hopefully, these numbers are due to people using more marijuana and less of other drugs. Otherwise, Michigan PD's priorities are questionable. And we've seen it on the ground here, buddy. I don't know if you're from Michigan, Ab Hanna, but I'll tell you this. On the ground, it looks like meth labs are blowing up left and right. Somehow, marijuana gets busted before anybody even gets to smoke a joint. Overall crime has decreased 15% in Michigan at the same time that marijuana arrests are rising. Perhaps the police in Michigan are cracking down on pot while they still can. That's what I said in my last video about everywhere on every legalization situation going on. All of a sudden, it's like carpet bombing. But marijuana arrests made up for 86% of all drug arrests in 2014. Come on, man. I don't even think anybody should be arrested for any drugs, period. But if you're going to arrest people for drugs, what the fuck are you arresting them for marijuana in a medical marijuana state for? And by the way, yeah, the state hasn't decriminalized marijuana, but dozen or more, 20, I don't know, a couple dozen cities and municipalities in Michigan have decriminalized marijuana. But the state police still enforces marijuana laws even in their municipalities. Hell, the county even does in some of them, if you're talking about Oakland County. So law enforcement is one of the top 3 industries actively combating the legalization of marijuana. Of course. So it's not all that surprising to see police in Michigan making up the most marijuana's current legal status. We're sure the residents of Flint would rather see their tax dollars go towards arresting those people responsible for allowing the city's water supply to be poisoned, including Governor Snyder. There's been more outrage about the water crisis than illicit pot use. Of course. Well, and Flint is one of those places that decriminalize marijuana. In fact, I think it's 2 ounces you can walk around town with. Flint's got like one of the most laid-back decriminalization policies in Michigan. But for some reason, there's still marijuana arrests in Flint. What reason or cause does Michigan police departments have for the rise of marijuana arrests? Many people believe the rise in arrests has to do with the fact that marijuana is the most commonly used illicit drug, with the regular marijuana use on the rise. On the other hand, Michigan State Police Sergeant Jeffrey Waniak claims the rise has to do with the increase in dispensaries. I agree with that, because now the cops know exactly where to go to do all their arrests. And before, they had to have someone narc somebody out and then figure out who this and that is and then get a warrant to do the searches and all this shit. I think it was accessible before, but it's even more now. So legally obtain it, he said. This is because even though medical marijuana is legal, the way you possess it may be legal. I don't know, maybe illegal, I think he meant. For example, driving with around your dank sack riding shotgun will lead to your arrest. We've done stories about that, and what happens is it's about $500 to get out of it in court if they still do that. But yeah, just throw it in your trunk if you don't want to worry about it at all. If you're a patient and you have your medical marijuana in your center console, which is obviously not locked and accessible to the driver, we take enforcement action quite often on that situation, said Yaniak. But this is 2016, and since this article came out, there's been an appeals court ruling that basically should deter cops from giving you that ticket. So anyway, bottom line is, this is all I really cared about in this whole article. 17% increase in arrests in Michigan. And we've seen, the numbers nationally. Marijuana busts increased last year with nearly 600,000 people being arrested on possession charge. A staggering number that costs taxpayers billions of dollars. Even the vast majority of Americans support legalization of the drug. New arrest data released Monday. Like I said, this is like a couple weeks ago. Comes at a time when nearly 30 states allow the drug for medical use and 8 have legalized it nationally. Recreationally, I should say. It's really shocking in this era that these numbers are so high, said Maria McFarland Sanchez Marino, Executive Director of Drug Policy at Alliance. It really makes you question why law enforcement is wasting resources and locking people up for personal use of marijuana. I know why. Anyway, the statistic is not only telling for those targeted by the war on drugs, it's costly to taxpayers who footed the bill for about 587,700 people to make their way through the criminal justice system last year. This is for marijuana still, guys, we're talking about. In 2010, when busts reached 750,000, the cost of arrests amounted to more than $3.6 billion. Sanchez Marino says the cost is still in the billions, even though the overall arrests are down 20% since their peak. That's not even counting the cost of lost work time and lingering financial burden of having a criminal record that stunts future employment opportunities, she added. It all comes as 57% of voters, yeah, that's a little higher now, 61 now, think that marijuana should be legalized. The same poll said 86% of Americans believe weed should be legalized in some capacity. The arrest increase only further demonstrates the need for state lawmakers to respect the will of the majority of their constituents and end the practice of marijuana prohibition once and for all, said Justin Streckel, political director of NORML, which seeks to liberalize marijuana laws. No, I believe they want to normalize marijuana laws, not liberalize. Liberalize would almost, I don't know what that means. I know what the definition of liberal means, but marijuana laws just need to be prohibited. Like, prohibition needs to be prohibited. Yeah, that's about it for that one. In 2016, more people were arrested for marijuana possession in America than for all violent crimes, which include murder, rape, aggravated assault, and robbery. Marijuana possession remains one of the single largest arrest categories in the nation and accounts for more than 5% of all incarcerations, or roughly 100,000 Americans. Unbelievable. And just to update you on Michigan arrests, as of July 13th, police made about 23,893 arrests involving marijuana in 2015, about 9% of all arrests, according to Michigan State Police data. This is just ridiculous. This article here, like I said, I will link this to, I'm not going to link that Newsweek bullshit. You can find that on your own. But I'm going to link the this article here that has all the demographical breakdowns on marijuana arrests, where you're most likely to get arrested in Michigan for marijuana and all that other shit. This is like an all-inclusive Michigan marijuana arrest study for all intents and purposes. So there you have that. And there you have the numbers, and there you have the case to be made for getting rid of prohibition, rather than this whole notion that all we need to do is tax and regulate marijuana, like whatever. Now, alcohol is another ball, like when you say tax and regulate marijuana, like alcohol, is there a lot of alcohol arrests still? There's no prohibition on arrests for alcohol. Well, I don't think there should be. Alcohol actually does cause social harm to society, to humanity. Alcohol is a scourge. Uncontrolled, unfettered alcohol is responsible for probably at least 85% of domestic violence, I would say. Who the fuck beats their fucking wife and kids up that isn't a drunk? I don't know, recovering alcoholics. Anyway, bottom line here is alcohol needs to have ways to curtail it and prohibit use and all that shit, because it is something that could fuck you up. All right, cannabis doesn't really do that. Man, I can barely even smoke this joint while I'm doing this video. Like, who sets out to just destroy like as much weed as they can on a regular basis? Not too many people. And when you do that, you're probably going to pick up a fucking joystick and play some video games next. Yeah, I just said joystick. I'm from the 80s, man. What do you expect? So one more time, prohibition versus, not prohibition, but ending prohibition versus taxing and regulating. Compared to what we got now, anything is better than what we got now. Right now, we got the state basically cramming some super stringent regulations down on us. And we have no choice but to basically comply. And people that currently existing in this system that we've had for the last 8 years, there's nothing left of it, man. There's no, guarantee that you're safe. They say that you have till December 15th to kind of like shut it down before applications are due and all that shit. I would argue that every day that you breathe free air is is a good day. And that's all I got on this, man. Like I said, if you got some comments, if you feel passionate about something in my legalize or regulate marijuana like alcohol that you think, like, hey, this is going to be where those arrests come from, man, point it out to me. Because I know, I mean, and I'm not talking to Timothy Locke from Abrogate when I say that. That's not for you. I know what you would say. Because what he would say, and I'm not going to try to put words in his mouth, but I'm pretty sure he did say that the more words you give them, the more ways they have to enforce rules and laws. I mean, everything in this is basically like, hey, this is what's allowed. And currently there's like this big black area of everything marijuana where they can just arrest you if they want. And what this regulation package does is it shines a light on certain things and says, oh, this stuff here you can't get arrested for, or you get this is the penalties if you do get caught with it. So we're still talking about police dealing with this stuff. And, like everything that you write down and say this is the law, they can use that and say, well, okay, you didn't do this exactly according to the law, so, and that's that, man. Subscribe to my channel if you this is the first time you've seen it, or maybe you've watched a couple of my videos. Check into it, subscribe, look at some more videos down the list. I feel like I got a pretty good body of work, and I'm going to continue keeping up with what's going on and putting videos out. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, jump aboard.